My Lords, I rise briefly to speak in support, general support, of the amendment proposed by my noble friend, Lord Lucas. I say as a preliminary that I'm somewhat horrified to hear from his remarks that there is an aversion on the cross benches to hairdressers. I hadn't heard that before. I can't imagine why there would be an aversion to hairdressers as members of your Lordship's House on the cross benches or elsewhere. And I hope there'll be an opportunity for at least one member of the cross benches to rise before this short debate concludes in order to put my noble friend right about that and to give us all a proper egalitarian assurance. But if I could, just turning to the amendment, remind noble lords of my general position. I said at second reading that in any 21st century democracy there was always going to be a case that the legislature should be elected. That must surely be the default position, and it must apply to both houses. And all those who say that you can't have two elected houses are ignorant of the vast majority of functioning democracies, which do have two elected houses. They're different in their composition, often in their method of election. But of course it's perfectly possible to have two elected houses who work together to generate effective legislation. And that is what I find so frustrating about a large part of the debate, and I've sat in for much of the debate in the course of this evening and the course of today. My noble friend makes a sally. I don't intend to go into the details of whether it should be an open candidates list, a closed candidates list, a vetted candidates list, all the other tunes that could be played on this particular theme. I simply say that he puts his finger on something in saying that a house which is entirely appointed in a 21st century democracy, with the exception of the bishops, a house that is entirely appointed is mildly ludicrous and is indefensible as a long-term proposition, which is why, presumably, the Labour Party in its manifesto put forward a package of reforms to be delivered at different times, some immediately and some for consultation for enactment later. That's a clear distinction in the manifesto. And why it is such a frustration, the noble Baroness, the Lord Privy Seal, seems to be frustrated that there is some sort of filibustering going on. My lords, if there were a filibuster, I wish somebody told me about it. I'd like to have taken part. This is the first time I have spoken in this debate, and the two bills I have been involved in, sitting on the front bench speaking for transport, have gone through your Lordship's House in record time. The buses bill ended on its third day of committee when it had had 4 days allocated to it. I find it mildly offensive to be told that there's a filibuster going on when many of us are actually working to see the House's business dispatched with reasonable efficiency. But I will say that if the noble Baroness is frustrated by what she sees, I think wrongly, as a filibuster on this or on other bills, I think she has to understand in all candour how frustrated many of us are on our side of the House that she is utterly silent about the bringing forward of the further measures which the Labour Party had in its manifesto. Why no timetable is given. Why no undertaking even to issue a white paper or a consultation document has come forward. We simply, I don't wish to sound in any sense offensive, and I don't wish to impugn in any way the honour of the noble Baroness or her colleagues on the front bench. But she will understand in the light of history why many of us find it difficult to believe that the government is going to find time in the current Parliament to bring forward the legislation implied by its manifesto beyond this bill. And so the sorts of assurances that we're looking for in terms of timetabling, likely content, consultation methods, all of that would actually take a lot of the sting out of this, but we hear nothing at all of it. Now, that is why I support my noble friend's amendment, because it brings just a little glimmer of democracy, as he says, a controllable element of democracy into your lordship's house on a limited basis. I'd like to go further. I'd like to see a larger element of democracy in your lordship's house if we are going to make change at all. But I will go with what my noble friend Lord Lucas is proposing, precisely because it opens that door. And I really wish to hear from the noble Baroness on the front bench why that is such a bad idea, why a glimmer of democracy is not possible, and a little bit more than we've had so far in terms of that programme, which in every attempt to raise it, she has just brought down the shutters.